Y'all ready to be history?
Get started.
Welcome.
Hi.
Hello, everyone!
To the Pro Audio Suite, thanks to Rode Microphones.
These guys are professional. They're motivated.
Introducing Robert Marshall from Source Elements and Someone Audio Post, Chicago. Darren Robbo Robertson from Voodoo Radio Imaging, Sydney. Tech to the VO Stars, George the Tech Whittam from LA. And me, Andrew Peters, voiceover talent and home studio guy.
Line up, ladies!
Here we go.
Welcome to another Pro Audio Suite podcast. We have a special guest once again, Mary Lynn Wisner. How are you, Mary Lynn?
I'm great. How are you doing?
Good. Now we got a subject we're obviously going to get to at some point, but we should actually cover off what's been happening for the last hour and 40 minutes. Now,
I have no idea.
Apollo 13 managed to go around the dark side of the moon with basically a plastic bottle, a piece of cardboard, and some sticky tape.
Yeah.
We had a bit more trouble with the Apollo, our version of the Apollo 2. Who wants to start getting the boots in?
Well, Mary Lynn stirred the oxygen tanks. That was the problem, wasn't it?
I'm so sorry. I know. And yeah, you guys definitely rescued me, so thank you.
Robert, you did all the heavy lifting here. You talk.
Right. I was going to say it's a little bit hard to completely blame Apollo. Like ultimately with this one, we didn't have to go into the command line and you're right.
You're a manufacturer apologist.
Yes, I am. I sympathize, I guess. But no, it was like, there was no microphone. So this whole thing started out with like, hey, just pick your microphone. What are you using? I'm using an Apollo. Okay, click on Apollo. There is no Apollo in the list. All right, why not? And then we couldn't figure out why there was no Apollo in the list until I screen shared in to find out that the Apollo driver said nothing is connected. So I was just like, let's just reinstall the Apollo driver. So we reinstall the Apollo driver or the whole software, which you have to download every single plugin, right? Should be a small thing, but no, it's 4 gigs.
You have to download a 4 gig package.
Yeah, exactly. So you download that, install that, and then it basically says,
permissions this.
Give permissions, but if you don't give permissions within 30 minutes, then basically what it doesn't say, but kind of implies, is that it's going to forever banish this software, which is probably how we got in that situation in the first place, where whoever installed it
didn't finish that.
Didn't click on allow within 30 minutes, and now there's never the opportunity to allow until we reinstalled. So then we got it reinstalled. Then we got the computer rebooted. Then we launched Apollo, and then it immediately wanted its firmware updated, and finally.
Meanwhile, cursing my name quietly all throughout the whole thing.
Well, to be honest with you, I caught up on a bit of paperwork that I've been trying to get to all week, so yeah, it was kind of helpful.
Yeah, I did
I did my taxes.
Yeah, I did my taxes.
I just did the shopping for the week.
Polished the Vespa. Is that what they call it these days?
Polished the Vespa. Yeah.
Is that what they're saying these days?
We should actually, interestingly say, this is not on a PC. This is on a Mac.
Correct. Yeah.
Right.
In the days
it's the security. And so what made it, what I said when I was like, maybe it's not entirely Apollo. It's also the Mac is, trying to protect the user from ever possibly falling into some rabbit hole. So you have to be very, yes, I agree. I want to do this. I'm letting this happen. And there's so many places to click that the joke before this was just to get the screen share going so that I could help Mary Lynn. There was a whole bunch of, hurdles to jump through with that, with allowing the screen to be seen, with allowing the Mac to be controlled. Again, a trip to the security and privacy, where I don't think Apple has that refined very well, because as soon as you go to security and privacy, you have to know to go to the right side, and then you have to know to click on the left side, which what item you want to give permissions to. Is it my screen? Is it my accessibility?
But you know what? You know what this all speaks to, and not to totally veer off here, but poor voice actors. I mean, because if you're someone like me who is not tech savvy and you're just trying to record something, or you've got a quick Source Connect session, and could you imagine you're freaking out that you have to do this and do that, and then what? And I didn't know to do this and do that. I mean, there's so much more pressure added to just, having to be performance ready, now having to be, tech savvy ready, engineer ready, producer ready. It's a lot. I think that, there's got to be some kind of, I know that's what everybody has to be now. I get that and I appreciate that. But, it's kind of overwhelming.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is like, if this wasn't the Friendly Neighborhood podcast, it would have been like the session would have been lost.
I would have lost the job.
I would have walked away.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Well, Andrew, you had the engineer ready situation last night, right?
I did, and this is not the first time, and it's and I actually did speak to Robbo about this because I was asked to include playback during the session, and I replied saying I don't do playback.
Yeah, but not only playback. Didn't they want cuts as well?
No, it wasn't cuts; it was just playback. But the playback thing is.
By the way, can you mix it for me?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, well, I said to Robbo, why am I even bothering? I might as well do the whole thing. You don't need an engineer. If that's what you want.
By the way, I play guitar. You need some music?
Robert, let me ask you this. If you had voice talent that could only come to you on Zoom, for whatever reason, you didn't have Source Connect, so Zoom was your only option. I said this to Andrew.
Like, I don't have Source Connect, or the talent doesn't have Source Connect?
Well, just say no one. You can't use Source Connect. The only way you can connect everybody together is through Zoom, right? This is what I would do, and I'd be interested to see if you agreed. If I was, because the audio engineer was basically going, I can't give you playback. Andrew needs you to. But if I was the engineer, I would record the Zoom call as I would normally record any voiceover session. As we were going, I would be labeling clips and good tag, or Joe the client said nice tag, blah blah blah, as I would normally cut up my session. And then when they wanted to hear playback, I would go, okay, listen, you need to remember this is only Zoom quality audio. We're only listening for performance, not for audio quality. Here you go. Here's what your preferred take is.
But wait, was there actually an engineer literally
there
on
was
the
an
line?
engineer. So what was he doing?
Yeah.
What was this engineer
that's the
doing?
part that
Why did he
I'm
need
totally
to be there?
He was
drinking
obviously
his
taking
coffee.
notes. Yeah,
He was like
taking notes
engineering a
about the
different
tapes.
job.
I don't know. But maybe like me. Maybe he was doing his tax return while he was waiting for Andrew to finish. I don't know. But it's like...
That's the part that really has me scratching my head.
Yeah.
I guess my point to Robert is, regardless of how the audio was coming in, wouldn't you treat it as a normal session, and if the client wanted playback, and just give them that
Yes.
playback, but just be
I
going,
would, I would basically double my work.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what you're saying is, like, for whatever reason, it would never happen, but Source Connect was not an option. And I would do it the same way I would do a phone patch session in like 1990. So you record over the phone, everyone's hearing it over the phone, and then you do edits, and you have your edits all set, and then the voice talent sends you the audio file, and then you get your assistant to ear match everything that you did.
That's right.
Sometimes what you do there is you also have the voice talent parrot the take numbers. So at least when you're going through, you can find
The
them
talent
easier.
is also running a DAT machine backup in case Pro Tools crashes. And I know you're laughing,
the
but
good
that's
old DAT
actually
machine.
literally what my clients did back in 1999, 2000.
Well, do you know how I did it on the DAT machine?
No.
Stereo to the DAT machine. Voice talent is going to both channels. Talkback is going to one of the two channels, so that you could have the slate, but no one, if anybody grabbed the talkback mic at the wrong time, you always had the right channel that was totally clean.
Oh my God. Just too much to deal with.
Been there, done that.
Too much.
I actually had
indeed.
my portable DAT machine out the other day. There you go.
I remember taking up the portable DAT machine sometimes, like in the 90s, when early 90s, I had clients that would, were adamant about like real person casting, and we don't want actors. We want you to go to the mall and cast people. And I would bring the portable DAT machine and a microphone with me and go to Glendale Galleria or whatever.
No kidding.
And, I'd ask people to read copy.
Real man on the street.
Yeah.
Well, see, I used to have to do that, but in a different way. I had to go and get, street responses because I was in radio. So, you'd want people going, oh, I love summertime and all that sort of stuff. So you'd be walking down the mall in your Triple M T-shirt with the portable DAT recorder and a microphone and stopping people going, hey, do you mind doing something for me? Getting used to rejection.
Do I get an icy cold can of Coke?
Where's my
and
icy cold
Mars bar?
can of Coke? That's right.
I'd have to go record sound effects. I remember one time I had to go to the subway and pick up like sound effects of the subway. But the thing is that we had this DAT machine that fit in a bag, kind of like your ENG setup, like the front panel of the DAT machine is facing up at you. And then the mic we had was a shotgun mic in a big weird blimp with a handle on it. And if you were just looking casually on it, it looked kind of like a military gun.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It's like this long shotgun with a grip on the bottom of it. And you're like walking on the subway with this thing.
You look like you came out of a Ghostbusters movie or some crazy crap.
Exactly.
They're
Yeah.
running away from you.
Don't cross the
I know.
streets.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, pick your location carrying something like that for sure.
Indeed.
Right.
But I reckon this whole thing about playback well, I know now because George actually fessed up, but because I said to Robbo yesterday, I bet this came out of America. I bet some American talent said, I'll do playback.
I bet you're right.
Why are you blaming us?
Because it's your fault.
Because there's a lot of over eager actors, and some of these I have some students that actually have told me they'll put music on their auditions when they do pay-to-play auditions, just to have a leg up. It's like, God, you're doing all this extra work you don't need to do.
Yep.
So
it's a good way to hide all the noise in your setup. Just put music on it.
and use an effect like this. Just follow through this.
That's cool. That's cool.
Joe, I was trying to get you a job in radio imaging. Yeah, exactly.
Hey, Mary Ann, give me the screen share back and we'll one-up George. I got the whole Apollo.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure you will. But speaking of which, I did see a thread that you actually took down, Mary Lynn.
Oh, poor Mary Lynn.
It was interesting. I think, George, you jumped in at one point. I certainly jumped in.
Yes, I did, actually.
And yeah, you did. And it was about the delivery of auditions. Should you or should you not debrief, edit, etc., etc.
I put it up there because, oh gosh, I feel like I need to be a little sensitive because I'm not sure if there's a particular agent listening, because I know one agent really likes this. But I've noticed this trend lately where I'm getting auditions back. I kind of want to say particularly from one agent, anyway, where the actors are taking every breath out. And if you're not good at editing, so you're just kind of butting up your sentences together, or even if you are leaving a little bit of like room noise, I can still hear it. And it's so distracting to me, and it's so unnatural sounding. And when you're, say, someone like me that's a casting director and you're listening back to a whole bunch of auditions and they all kind of come in from one place, it actually it's very distracting. And it's also, I couldn't submit any talent from this particular agency because it was just so annoying to me. And then I started thinking, okay, well, maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm just being hyper, aware of it. And because now I'm so focused on it, that's all I'm hearing. But when I played those auditions back against, actors' auditions that I was getting elsewhere, what I wasn't hearing was so loud, you know what I'm saying? That I didn't want my client to think that I had recorded those people that way.
The silence was
deafening.
deafening.
I didn't submit them.
Right. You didn't want that low quality to speak for your quality.
Yeah, and it what's unfortunate is that, it wasn't the sound quality of these actors or necessarily their performance. It was the editing quality and this trend or whatever they're doing. I don't know what it is.
There's nothing better than a breath cut in half.
What's that?
Like a breath just sliced in half.
Yeah, it's a very weird phenomenon. And when you start focusing on it, that's all you hear. Mm-hmm. And so I just put a post up on Facebook like, hey guys, what is this trend that's going on where you're cutting out every single breath? You're allowed to breathe. It's weirder to hear people not breathe in an audition, and I, of course you can take, the occasional gasp out or whatever, but to have these very clipped edits, it's distracting. So it created this huge thread and I did take it down after a while because it was just kind of annoying.
I think my question was clarity on what you're describing. So I was more, and you addressed this a minute ago briefly, but was whether they were chopping out the time where the breath was, silencing where the breath was, or what? What were they actually doing that was so distracting? And it sounds to me like you're describing that they were literally deleting that time, changing the timing of the performance.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's You always leave some time there, and it has to sound like it was naturally read. If like people know when someone needs to take a breath or when there's an end of a sentence, and if you
everybody's worried about AI, take out all the breaths and sound like AI.
Yeah, exactly.
You're going to sound like a computer. It's like, humans breathe. And I always tell people.
So did you do like a? Sorry, go ahead.
I always tell people when you listen to NPR or any of the hundreds of shows you listen to, the podcasts, Not a single thing you're hearing, and almost entirely is, unless it's a highly produced production, is debreathed. It's all the breaths are there. The natural human speech patterns are there. The little mouth noises are there. It's all there. You know?
If I'm doing a spot, like I'll maybe debreath the announcer, but if it's anything that's like supposed to sound like an actor playing a part, anything like that, you leave the breaths in.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And like I said, I mean, obviously sometimes people will take you just, maybe if you have a long script, you take a big,
gasping
breath in or something. But yeah, I get that. But what's annoying, and I think where this person was missing the mark and directing the talent to take their breaths out, is that they were also eliminating just even the kind of the gap in between. So
right, they're messing with
it
the
just
timing.
sounded so unnatural. Yeah. Or if the person went in and took a breath out, then they might have just recorded a little bit of like room noise, but it still sounded different. You know, again, I'm not savvy the way you guys are with that, but it's quite noticeable to me. And again, I know I'm way more focused on those kinds of things, and being a casting director, I want to send my client back.
Yeah, something I see that gets trickled to me from my clients that are coming to me for tech help is also, and they'll say, I was told to fill in the blank, or somebody said to fill in the blank. And then I'll say, or the audition said fill in the blank. And I'll say, well, can you send me that so I can read it? Because the language is important, right? You know how much effort a commercial copywriter puts into writing commercial copy. Like every word is slaved over, right? Language is really important. And if you don't describe the instructions to a talent or anybody else accurately, then you can get a dramatically wrong result. Even misplacing a comma can have very, very different meanings, right?
Yeah.
So, and this is what I would see. I would see instructions provided to the talent that were poorly written. And so the talent is just interpreting it the best they understand, which is, I'm told to remove the breaths. Okay, that is not enough information. It's like if they want the breath levels reduced, that's one thing. If they want the breaths silenced, that's another thing. But if they want all the breaths cut out and the time removed, that's another thing, which I don't think anybody wants that.
I see no situation where a talent should ever have to remove breaths.
Absolutely. And
like
I'll tell you something.
Maybe top and tail, the beginning and the end, so you don't hear like the shuffling of papers before. But
yeah, of course.
Man, like
in my 30 years of casting, I have never, ever, had an ad agency producer or copywriter, when they hired me to cast the spot, say, oh, make sure the talent takes out the breaths. So it's not coming from them.
Right.
It's not coming from the ad agency or the production company. It's some particular, person or representative or whatever that thinks that that's what's going to make it better. I don't know, and again, I'm not trying to call people out. I just think that it's really not helpful to the actor.
Yeah, and if that gets spread out as a trend, like if that piece of instruction gets carbon copied enough, it spreads very quickly. And then another agency, another representative or someone at an agency could say, well, these look like good instructions, just send those. And then those go out to more people.
I think it's more about the information being misunderstood. That's the issue, because admittedly, if I audition or whatever, I will actually, if the breath is distracting, I will remove it. If it's not, then I'll keep it. Whatever works for that read. But I think the trouble is that it's like they throw a huge blanket over this statement.
Well, it's absolutes. So I had someone the other day that was like, I have to do audiobooks and it says it has to be between this level and that level, but it can't be compressed and it can't be limited.
Oh God, that's been going around.
And I was like, well, then there's no way.
It's another episode to bitch about.
There's no effing way that's going to happen. You're going to compress it. If you want to guarantee a certain level, enter a compressor, especially if you're going to dictate the low level and the high level and you're giving a very specific window. And so this person was just like, well, it says no compression. So I don't know what to do.
It's like saying, I want you to run a
gave
100-meter
up.
dash, but never let your feet lift off the ground completely.
Yeah, it's just impossible.
Yeah, look, I guess
I'm like, there's no
I
way to
can
do
actually
it.
do that 100-meter dash without lifting my feet off the ground. Just saying.
Benny Hill music.
he's just got he's got a 100-meter roll of black PVC and some Vaseline. That's all.
Yeah. How do you know what I'm doing on the weekend?
Oh, jeez.
I probably
you've
got a
been
bit of a
talking.
different take on it. For me, I don't know that some clunky editing in a submission would necessarily sort of turn me off. But I guess what would turn me off, and maybe the two are combined, thinking about it, is if it was overcompressed and EQ'd and just in a way that sort of made me think, this is what I'm going to get and what I'm going to have to work with, that would put me off more than worrying about some sloppy editing, because the sloppy editing is just a simple, hey, don't cut anything when you send me the final.
I was going to ask about that because I don't think, in my mind at least, I assume that any audition is indicative at all of the recording environment. So,
right.
In other words, the assumption is that it's a professional voice talent. And so my first gripe with auditions is this, however. Here's the parameters of the audition, like whatever it might be, non-union, like in this particular city, this, that, and the other thing. And then every agent in the world has to email in being like, does it have to be this, or can we submit that? Or they don't even do that and they submit stuff that's outside of the spec. So then you end up with, if you don't catch it yourself and it goes through the clients decide to hire that person, all of a sudden your job got more expensive maybe because apparently this talent has to be sent to a studio and they don't have a home studio, or vice versa. Or they're not in an area where you were prepared to have them, because sometimes there are some regional issues. And so it's like not reading the spec or thinking that you're allowed to make up your own spec or ignore some individual item within it. That's annoying. But then the other thing is, I think for talent, if you're auditioning, the assumption is that you have a setup that you can record professionally with. And then, yeah, for all I care, like audition on the subway with your iPhone. We just want to hear your interpretation and something that gets you a good idea of what your voice is. But I don't think anybody necessarily is listening to auditions assuming that that's exactly how it will be. You know?
Well, I think it's another issue, and that is if the actual actor who, again, quote unquote, is actually a professional, then they know what it's supposed to sound like.
Yeah.
So if they edit out all the breaths and listen to it back and they hear the result of doing that and think that's what it's supposed to sound like, they're not a professional friggin' voice actor.
True.
There's no way they can be.
Unless they're living
They
under
don't
the fear
listen.
of God from their agent going, you need to cut your breaths out.
That's the
No,
problem.
listening is everything. You have to be a good listener. You have to know what you're listening for and know what it's supposed to sound like.
Yeah. But
and
listen to
I
the direction.
I think the reason, I get hired, the reason you hire a casting director rather than, just throwing it out to all the agents out there and hoping that they read the specs and they do it right, like you were saying, is that we mull through and go through all that and just send the best.
Yeah.
And, it's too competitive out there now. I mean, I don't have to throw the net out all across the country. I do because I'm, I feel like that's my job. But if I really had to cast any job, I could find everybody I need here in LA, but I don't, I'll throw the net out wider. And I think that for actors to be competitive in this industry, yes, you have to know how to edit, you have to know how to record yourself and present your audition as close to, broadcast quality as possible, because ultimately that's what they're going to want it to sound like on air. The performance obviously is paramount, but I can't submit somebody's audition if their performance is great, but the sound quality is really bad. So
has that changed more so in the last 2 years since COVID?
Yeah. I've never really thought that. So now the sound quality is assumed to be what you're getting, whereas before I still think that way. Like I just assume that like an actor doesn't want to be like handcuffed to their booth, and so an audition comes in, and why not just like have an app on your cell phone and go find a quiet corner and give your audition?
I've gotten some great auditions off people's iPhones and really good auditions where I've been kind of surprised, where they're great.
Yeah, I mean, maybe my statement about doing it on the train's a little bit extreme. I'd only do that to Robbo.
Yeah, yes, I was going to say.
I would only record an
podcast.
episode from the train, yeah.
No, to me,
Yeah.
I agree with you. The performance, again, is what is important. And again, that goes back to like my job. If I've heard somebody's performance and it was really good, but the sound quality was bad, I'll call that actor if I know, if I have their number or email them or whatever, or I'll call their agent and say, hey, George's take was great. Just have him redo it because the sound was, kind of crappy or whatever. Mm-hmm. So, but that's what, that's why you hire a casting director.
Right.
But if I'm, reaching out to an agent and I'm very specific about, make sure they have Source Connect, make sure they're, union or whatever it is. And here's the directions and the specs because I took the time to talk to the ad agency and all that stuff. I expect to get back the proper audition, and I don't expect to get back all that weird stuff because I think it actually sounds more unprofessional. It just sounds choppy. And it when I'm sending those actors auditions against other talent that don't do that, in the long run, you realize how badly it makes those actors sound.
Can I ask you, this is probably not something you can answer, but did you have just from some of those that you could receive that were in that way, did you have the feeling that these actors had, considerable experience and they were just taking marching orders, like walking off a cliff?
Absolutely.
Walk off that cliff, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I would play devil's advocate too, Mary Lynn, and maybe put this to you. When you get what you call a good recording, it's probably processed, I'm imagining, some compression and EQ and all the rest of it to make them pop when you're listening to their demos. So if they're doing that, if they're compressing and EQing and sort of as we've talked about, they're not engineers, some of those processes can make breaths sound really unnatural and pop and be really harsh. And all the rest of it, is there then a temptation when they're trying to present you with the best recording, is there then a temptation for them to go, oh shit, those breaths, they're really distracting, I might take them out? So is one thing leading to another problem though? Because these guys aren't engineers, they're voiceover artists.
That's a good question. I'll be very honest with you. I sometimes can't tell when somebody's done all the processing and compression. It just still sounds good to me. It's the bad editing, I can tell, and,
sure.
And again, you guys have way different ears than I have when it comes to, processing and that sort of thing. So, I'm always first and foremost listening for a performance, and are they following the specs, or do they have something interesting in their voice, or how did they interpret that copy, and, all those kinds of, more actory performance things. To me, it's kind of more of a jarring, because when you're, at least for me, like when I'm listening back to casting sessions and auditions, I kind of get into this zone and I'm very focused on the performance. And then when I hear like that cut, it's very subtle, of course, but in my ear, it's sort of jarring. So again, I'm not sure if I'm making sense, but it's more distracting to me than if they over-processed or EQ'd or whatever.
So if we paraphrased what you've just said, and this is my take, correct me if I'm wrong, but you would rather hear a breath that might be a little unnatural than no breath at all that's a bad edit.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
There you go.
There's other things like some words, the breath is almost like W, and like it's like the exhale is kind of sometimes part of the word and part of the performance. So you have to be careful sometimes about how you do it. The other thing I was going to point out to everyone out there is that if you compress, you will effectively make your breaths louder.
Right.
Yeah.
And room tone.
And EQ.
Right,
Yeah.
and everything, right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
So it's like, like you can start creating work for yourself if you're trying to like over process these things. And
good point.
I really think it's about the performance and about having just a reasonably clean recording so that whatever noise is going on is not interfering with hearing of who you are and how you do what you do. That's what the audition's about.
I just try and imagine where this voiceover is going to be used and how it's going to be used, and then that's how I would deliver it. So it would actually sound like it was going to be the finished voiceover.
And that's because you're a pro.
I was just going to say, that's the way you should be doing it. And it's really, I always say to the actor, it's your audition. It's not your agent's audition.
Yeah.
It's not the booth director's audition. It's your audition.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But is that across the board, this strange direction from some agents?
No.
Okay.
I kind of honestly avoid listening to auditions, but I've not heard of that before. I think I remember when George brought the thread up, and it was so odd to me. I didn't understand like why like de-breathing auditions. Like what?
It's odd to me. It's an odd thing, and I think one of you just said this earlier is that, you know, it's sort of becoming maybe a little bit of a snowball thing. Like maybe somebody, this particular thing is happening in one region, let's say, and then, you know, those actors say, well, this is what I was told to do, and then they tell somebody, and so on, and then they think that that's what they're supposed to do. Yep. And you know, it can snowball, and that's why I brought it up on Facebook. I was just like, what is this trend? And, you know, it's very interesting. I don't know if you guys noticed before I took it down, you know, a lot of longtime pros that commented were like, what are you talking about? Because it's not something normally that any of them would do. So it's kind of this new thing that, you know, one particular faction just started doing.
I have a strange one that's not so, like maybe not so strange, but audio engineer voice talent submits audition and they sound not like themselves. And then find out that, this was like, they were trying to sound bigger and whatnot, and they literally pitched themselves down. And then in the session, it's basically like, oh yeah, when you're done, just do this, like knock it down by 2 cents or 5 cents or whatever the pitch shift was.
Oh wow!
And it's like, I don't know, like
that's crossing the streams.
Yeah, I think
a little bit, yeah. Like that's what I do. And what was interesting is I thought the other place where I was going to run into this, I had to record the like the monster truck guy, and I was expecting like. I was all excited. I was like, dude, I want, like, what's your setup? What do you do? Right? And he's like, I don't have it. I don't like just this. Here's my mic. Like nothing, no. I was like, really? Like nothing, no compression or anything. And I, figured it out. It wasn't that hard, to be honest. But I was just surprised if there was anybody out there that had a signature sound or a kind of thing. I was like, I was expecting that to be a processed VO recording or signal that I was going to get. And what was really funny about it is it sounded incredibly unimpressive during the session. Like,
poor guy.
It's not until you like threw all the compression and the delay all over it, and then I was like Sunday. But if now I was like Sunday. Like,
oh, that's interesting.
But it was funny going back to your point before, Mary Lynn, and I did see quite a few of the what you regard as veteran voice talent making comments, and one in particular which I engaged with. But it was once again, it was too like black and white. There was no sort of grey area in the comment. It was like, why would you even think about doing something like that? Right. It's like, well, you would think about doing something like that because sometimes things can be distracting, and it may just happen to be a breath that is really distracting, and you should remove it because you're trying to deliver something that is not going to distract the person who's casting you.
Yeah. Yeah, so that is simply just professional talent with years of experience.
Yeah, but the point is, if you're going to do it right.
Yeah, correct.
Right, do it right, and not on every single breath. Because people breathe. We're humans. So.
Yeah, I mean the way to get away with it, quite frankly, is this: you first have to have a very quiet environment, so that when you cut the breath out, you don't end up with a feel the silence kind of moment where you notice the noise floor.
Yeah.
Because maybe they don't even notice that you have a noise floor until you cut the breath out, and then they know what silence is. So first off is have a clean enough signal where when you cut the breath out, it's completely unnoticed. When you cut the breath out, leave the time unless for some reason you took too much time for that. And then finally, if you want to get persnickety about it, it depends on what program you're in, but you should hopefully be able to throw a bunch of blanket fade-ins, the quickest little 2 millisecond, 3 millisecond fade-ins and outs. And that way, if there is a low noise floor, it doesn't click in or click out. Because the worst situation would be as if you had like a low rumble going on in your house or wherever your recording environment is, and you cut the breath out. When the breath cuts out, it clicks out because it just goes from And then when it comes back in before you speak, it clicks in, and it just becomes incredibly obvious.
If you're using Twisted Wave or Adobe Audition and edit in waveform mode, you use what's called special paste or mix paste to put in room tone wherever you're removing something. And when it's done correctly, it is seamless. I mean, it is completely seamless. Right. The edits disappear completely, other than the eeriness
what's
of not
called,
ever
George?
Breathing ever.
Special paste.
Special
what
paste.
special
what?
paste is like paste in the gaps kind of thing.
Special paste. Okay.
Yeah. So with special paste, you can copy a segment of room tone, and then it stays in the clipboard. That's the memory. It's temporary.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And then any place you want to replace, let's say between breaths, you did that horror show of a mouth click sound, to suck your tongue, right? Well, you can immediately paste your room tone over it. And by using special paste, the paste room tone will match the length of the selection. So if you want to replace a mouth click breath horror show that lasts for 0.23 seconds or 0.5 seconds, you can have 5 seconds of room tone. But when you special paste it, it will paste in exactly the length of your selection. Boom, Bob's your uncle. It flies. It goes so fast.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, but again,
in Pro Tools, that's Command Option Paste.
Yeah,
which
repeat
is
to
fit
fill selection.
or Paste to fill.
Yeah,
same
paste
idea.
to fill
Yeah.
selection.
Most DAWs have
Could you imagine actors again, when you're trying to get a whole bunch of auditions out and
That's what I'm saying. Just get a quiet room.
I know.
And then you don't even have to do that.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, but
It's
the quiet room in a home studio is still minus 50 to minus 60 decibels of room tone.
Yeah.
It's not silent.
Yeah.
Digital black is like minus 90 or wide collider?
Minus 144.
Whatever it is. Yeah. So it's almost nobody has that in Los Angeles or in a city. I've heard a lot of studios. So it's just know what you're giving them and understand the context of what you're auditioning for. Know the market, know what they want, and you're going to get the gig. The people that don't know what they're wanting are going to miss the mark every time. And that's being professional. That's experience, right?
Interestingly,
I think there's something to be said for the audition that sounds like it's trying too hard.
Exactly.
For whatever reason, taking out breaths sounds processed, sounds like too, if it's obvious that you've edited, it's sort of like you're cheating in a way.
Well, that's what I think, because then I go, okay, if they spent all that time doing that, then what else did they do? And they're not going to be able to, perform on the fly. And so it's like, forget it.
Right.
I move on.
Maybe it just makes me want to kind of rethink some of the support I provide, or at least advice, and that is spend more time listening. Because I realize I don't tell people that very often. I don't catch myself telling people, now listen to it back. Now, how did that sound to you? Listen to it. I ask pros to do it all the time. I'm like, go ahead, listen to that back. What do you think? And they know what it's supposed to sound like. And they go, let's do this or that, or, oh, we got it. But a lot of people without that experience, they need to learn that. They need to have the practice of listening.
Well, I think this particular group is being told what to do, so they're kind of afraid to not submit per the instructions.
That's tough.
I'm a big fan of less is more. Whenever you don't know, less is typically more.
Yeah.
I've seen people get jobs because, for instance, I remember one, I think they were auditioning Santa, and it was just like a whole bunch of people like, ho, ho, ho. And one person really read the script and kind of got it that it was like this, whatever Santa, I can't remember. They got like, ho, ho,
ironic
ho.
Or disenchanted Santa.
And had an interpretation, and it was odd, but it's like, got it. And it wasn't just that it was like stood out because it was like so typical, like, ho, ho, ho. Everyone was doing it. It just didn't like have a impact.
Well, that's why I always tell actors, I'm a huge fan of, ad-libbing and lead-ins and things like that. Because, I always say, think about who's listening back to you. I'm the bored, jaded casting director who has to listen to 100 auditions. And if you don't grab me on that first line,
hundreds of ho, ho, ho's.
Yeah. No hose.
I think Santa's going to have a great Christmas with all those hoes hanging around.
So how about I've seen auditions where it's like a two, whatever, like a mother-father script or something, and then the person auditioning gets somebody else to read the other lines.
Yeah. We don't do that anymore. I mean, again, that's something I kind of call that like in the non-union world. Again, as a casting director, if we had a dialogue spot, I would have both actors in the booth together reading the spot.
That was like 20 years ago when they would let you do that. Like actually have people come in.
I never did that. I always sent back auditions to my clients that would sound like the actual commercial. Now obviously maybe an actor didn't show up and there was one actor left and I had to have him wildline it. But
But honestly, when was that they like even in person directed auditions? Even,
I know. Well, pre-pandemic, I was still having actors come into the studio. I mean, I mostly would do. I'll be honest. Most of the time, I would send stuff to the agents. But if it was a big campaign, I had them coming into the studio so I could direct them and work with them. Now,
it's been years since I've seen any era.
I know. It's kind of sad. We don't get to have them in the booth anymore.
And the actors missed that too. They missed out.
I mean, I remember when actors used to get paid for auditions.
Well, celebrities did, not. If it was a demo, they would call it a demo.
A demo rate, you're right? They'd get some, like not full money, but they would come in, they'd sign their sheet. There was like very specific rules about what direction could be given. Everyone had to be given the same direction.
That was usually like in a callback situation.
Yeah, we used to get paid here. It's called a submission rate.
Oh, nice.
But that seems to be
It
waning.
used to be about $120 or something, wasn't it?
190.
Yeah.
190.
190. Yeah. But I think now everyone's sort of working from home. They're kind of, people are going, well.
But then also if it went final, that sub rate would come off.
Well, off the big
right.
rate, main rate.
So it wasn't a separate fee altogether. Yeah.
No, not at all. So there you go. Don't deep-breath.
Don't deep-breath.
Don't
deep-breath.
Just breathe.
Unless it's going to win you the gig.
I'm going to throw another I'm going to throw another one in there just quickly too. Don't whatever you do, don't buy Waves D-breath. I had a
we didn't even get to that one. Gosh.
I tell you what,
even as an audio engineer, I hate it. It doesn't work. I'm sorry Waves, sorry Gomez, if you're listening, I love you, buddy. It doesn't work. It's terrible.
Yeah.
It takes out stuff that's not supposed to be taken.
Yeah.
It's like a really crazy gate.
Yeah, it's awful.
Yeah.
It's awful.
Yeah.
Sorry. Might work for vocals for vocalists.
I think it's more meant for like music.
It's meant to be more musical, yeah. It doesn't work on voiceover. Yeah. Absolutely.
No.
There you go.
So voiceover deep breath is the next edition plugin that they're releasing.
There you go, George.
Oh boy.
Well, maybe you can get onto Apollo and get them to include that in their massive 4 gig download bundle of software.
Yeah.
Yeah, Apollo.
That's one big
Something else from Apollo that doesn't work.
Okay, get yourself a lawyer, son.
I was just going to say.
You're going to need a real good one.
The thoughts and opinions of the hosts of the show are not representing the owners of the network.
Wasn't me, by the way.
They don't represent
Send
the
all
the
Patreon
opinions.
checks directly to Universal Audio.
Robert Marshall speaking. Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
Well, that was fun. Is it over?
The Pro Audio Suite recorded using Rode NTG5s and Source Connect. Edited by Andrew Peters and mixed by Voodoo Radio Imaging. With tech support from George the Tech Whittam. Help us share the show with more people and get your hands on exclusive content by contributing to our Patreon page. See patreon.com/Pro Audio Suite. Don't forget to subscribe to the show and join in the conversation on our Facebook group. To leave a comment, suggest a topic, or just say g'day, drop us a note at our website, proaudiosuite.com.